we see things that are wrong, we have to call it out. It's always been about the cause and not the applause from me. Some of them will say to me, who the hell are you to tell us what to do? You know, people will attack you. People come after you on your personal life all the time. I've been brave enough to call out paedophiles. I've taken out a paedophile ring within the UN. There is the price of freedom.
Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Bal.
My name's Taj.
Hi, it's Mandy. It's been great joining Changing Suit, empowering the next generation, talking about my own journey as an activist and a campaigner.
So Mandy, what got you so interested in activism? What was your introduction to that?
So for me, I had a friend, Rani, who had a disability, who ended up having a so-called arranged marriage many years ago. And she had a disability, and there was a guy that had come from India, and her family thought, oh yeah, marry him, he needs a visa, he'll look after you. And I think her family did this with the best intentions. There wasn't any malice in this, but sadly she suffered horrific abuse and was being financially abused, was controlled, not allowed out. He was having affairs in the house and was physically abusing her. And I kept calling out, and people were saying to me, oh, it's not our business to get involved in this. And I thought, no, hang on, I need to kind of help her and need to be a voice. So that's how I started campaigning. And obviously, like I said, I've been a founder of the UK Forced Marriage Unit, focusing very specifically on intellectual impairments and people that didn't have capacity. And I understood the nuances where, most of the parents were not doing it with the trying to protect their honor. They were just trying to do it where they get rid of the stigma of disability, have someone care for their child, and not think about the consequences of like the impact on these so-called spouses that you're bringing over. So that was something that where I started. And again, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s where there was a lot of new migrants from the global south, and domestic violence and things were really rampant, and people wouldn't address it. Women wouldn't access support services. So for me, I saw things that I knew that were not right. And so I kind of started calling out practices, and over the years.
Sorry to interject. How can we encourage the younger generation to be the activist and call out in these scenarios? What can you do to...
Especially in the South Asian community, because we are brought up to be respectable of what the older generation are saying, regardless of whether essentially it's the right thing. Like you said, from what your friend's parents were doing, they were doing it for the right intentions, but essentially it wasn't the right thing to do. So how do we encourage people to go against the grain, I guess?
So for me, I've always been outside the bell curve. And I think for me, I've kind of always celebrated being different. I didn't look like anyone else in my family. I kind of always have been somewhat different. But then I've been quite proud of who I am, and I never really follow the crowd. But for me, it comes back to the principles of our faith about standing up for others, standing up for social justice, promoting equality. If we see things that are wrong, we have to call it out. But it's very easy not to get involved. And sometimes young people will get involved in causes because it's the moment, that's because they're seeing everyone doing it. So there might be a protest and you're interested in it. What I would say to you, you have to find a cause that you're passionate about, something that aligns with your values, and realize that you can't do this on your own. You need to find people that share your vision and your energy, synergy, and come along to work with you. And then the other thing, what I would say to you is that you have to be led by your moral compass and not for the ego. Sadly, what I have found over the years is a lot of people will want to do something because they think they're going to be a 5-minute wonder. And somebody asked me recently, they were like, Mandy, you've been campaigning and being an activist for 34 years now. And, some people weren't even born when I started. And, so for me, it's about being very consistent. And it's always been about the cause and not the applause from me. And, by doing that, the universe has given me way more than I've ever deserved, and been given opportunities to travel around the world as one of the, sought after activists and campaigners to talk about social issues, work with some of the world's biggest companies and organizations, speak at the most best universities and Congress and Parliament and everywhere else. So for me, what it is, it's about the cause and not always wanting to be about myself. I've always been very clear that actually I'm coming on as the expert. I'm not telling your story. Your lived experience is your lived experience. I will not know how you're feeling. I may have some empathy and compassion towards it, But one of the things that I have noticed over the years when I meet people that run organizations or they call themselves activists, they want to use survivors to tell their story, to raise their profile in the media. And I always say to people, do you know what? That isn't the right way to do this, because actually you're going to be a one-hit wonder and you're not going to be sustainable, because actually when you hijack someone's story and make it about yourself, that isn't right, because you're like disempowering survivors. So I think that you have to find a course, be very clear about where you fit in that equation as well. And you're not bigger than the cause.
How do you evaluate yourself? Because you can be, okay, you're doing it for the cause, and then you can get lost in, okay, it's all about me. How do you evaluate yourself so you don't get to that stage where that happens, basically?
I think for me, like, I look at it that why am I even doing this in the first place? And I've taken on some real difficult challenges and conversations and abuse topics that probably a lot of people have not taken on. I was one of the first people to go and speak in like Regent Street Mosque and work with the Sharia Council, Muslim Council of Britain, and talk about issues that, that were going on, where my Muslim friends would say to me, look, I can't have at the lark, and if I do, I've been forced that my children may be taken off me. And again, it was about going into those communities and saying to them, look, she has a right to, not have a life full of violence. She has a right to a divorce if that's what she wants. And instead of like saying to her, we'll help you, they were like, are you being a good wife? Are you cooking, cleaning, meeting your husband's needs? And I was like, are you kidding me? What the hell kind of conversation are we having here? And for me, I think it is about looking at, these are the social issues. I can't do these on my own. And one of the things that I have learned over the years is that I have to work with the communities. I have to make men a part of the conversation, because often they are the gatekeepers. They are the ones, are the decision makers. They are the ones who are going to say to me, Mandy, okay, we'll work with you this way. And it's been very difficult. Like some of the work that I've done in Afghanistan, evacuating, refugees in the last couple of years. So, you cannot do it on your own. You have to have a team.
Mandy, can I ask you something? You've just picked up on a point that I wanted to understand a bit more. How has the community reacted to you? Because some of the issues that you've said, regardless of whichever faith, whichever part of the community we're talking about, they're very ingrained in our culture. And for you to then say, well, actually, that's wrong, what you're doing, abusing your wife and expecting her to take it and think it's okay and carry on. How is the community reacting to what you're saying?
Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. Some of them will say to me, who the hell are you to tell us what to do? But then, you have to have, quite tough skin to, just not take it personal. But one of the reasons that I would say to you is that I don't make it about faith, because religion is not telling you to do this. These are cultural things that will happen. So, for instance, like FGM and breast dining abuses that are happening, there is nothing religious about them. These are cultural, out-of-date practices that need to end. There's been, I was one of the first people to work on faith-related abuse around witchcraft and juju, where people would say, my child has been possessed. And I was like, your child's got epilepsy. There is a bit of a difference. You need to understand, you need to educate. Last year, I was in Dubai and I did a conference on child sexual abuse. So just think about that, in the Middle East, in an Arab country, and even in other countries in the MENA region. I've gone around and I've talked about violence against women and talked about abuse, and I've talked about sexual abuse as well. And I've called it out and supported victims and survivors. So for me, I'm very clear that this is what I'm going to be talking about. This is not challenging anyone with about Islam or Sikhism or any other faith. This is about, actually, this is a wrongdoing. This is a going against yours. I've read the Granth Sahib in English, I've read the Quran, and I've read lots of different texts, so I understand the culture. So, for instance, I'll give you a good example. Cousin marriage is really common within the Pakistani Bangladeshi community, for instance. And they were saying, oh, it's our culture, you don't understand, Mandy. And I said, yeah, okay, let me go back and look at this. And what I realized was, actually, it said that you cannot marry a child that you've given birth to, given milk to, or whatever else. But this is your interpretation of this. And I understand why you're doing it, because you want to hold on to wealth, you want to keep it in the family, you want to hold on to the community ties. But there is also another issue where your children are, because of the genes, you're having children with very complex disabilities, and life threatening illnesses. So what I'm saying is I'm not against cousin marriage, but maybe miss your first cousin, but maybe marry your second cousin. And I had this conversation. I did a big campaign in the Middle East around Saudi and other countries, but they don't do it as much now. It still is more in the global south. And, you know, people were understanding where I was coming from because I was showing them, look, you know, what we've seen over the years. I understand that you have 3 or 4 wives in your culture, and I'm not here to knock that. But actually, you have a responsibility because in Islam, you should be providing for your wife and your children, not the state. So, you know, I've been quite clear with people, and I'm not scared to call out the
So
wrongdoings.
the people that you speak to, everyone's very passionate, especially when it comes to religion. How do you ensure your safety as well? Because it can get to a point where people get very offended, because when you talk about religion is one thing, but when you talk about culture is
And
another.
can I just add one more thing? And this is, I think that's a really important point that you've said. Religion and culture are, they're not completely different, but you do need to separate the two, because especially when it's religion, there's no 2 ways about it. That conversation is not open, which is why even on our platform, we're very much, look, we're talking about culture, which is why we're talking about the whole of the South Asian culture, because we're all very, very similar in the way we think, regardless of whichever faith. But sorry, going back to Taj's question, how do you? Sorry, I know I butted in, but I thought it was a really important point that you made there.
Sorry. For me, you know, sadly, you know, I'm no longer on the electoral roll. Don't tell people where I live. You know, I have to use different mailing addresses to where I live. You know, you have friends that you can count on one hand. And, you know, last week, about 10 days ago, I was in London at an event talking at the Middle Eastern conference. And there was 2 men that actually had paid money to come and see me, but not to hear what I really had to say, but actually they didn't believe my stance on a 2-state solution, which I'm not going to get into today. But, you know, and they were just saying, you need to take off your social media, you need to do this. And we loved you before when you helped the Afghans and when you helped the Yazidis and you helped the other Muslims. We don't want you helping the Israeli women. So I kind of stood up for myself and I said, listen, I stand up for all women, regardless of religion, ethnicity, gender. You know, if you've been abused, I will support you. And at the end of the day, I'm not getting into this. This conference is not for that. But, you know, so there are these things that will happen. You know, people will attack you. People come after you on your personal life all the time. There's people, other feminists, who don't like the fact that you may be doing better than them or you're getting exposure or whatever else. And I've had women, sadly, over the years, you know, target me. And so they can't come after me professionally. So they come after me for something that I couldn't control. So, you know, when I was 21, I ended up having ovarian cancer. I lost an ovary, lost my 50% chances of ever having children. And then in my 30s, I ended up having a hysterectomy. So I was never able to have my own children. Something that, you know, sometimes I was quite saddened by, but then I realized that God had bigger plans for me and he needed me to do his work. And if I had children, I wouldn't be flying around the world doing things. So everything works out for a reason. But there was these women that started this campaign, oh, hashtag Mandy's barren. I was like, what the hell would you do that? How would another woman say that to another woman and think it's acceptable to do that? So what I'm going to say to you that, you know, people's own anxiety, fears, envy, whatever it is, brings out their insecurities to the surface. And I'm just staying in my lane, doing my work, and just kind of doing the work that I've been blessed to do. I believe that I'm doing God's work. And when I say that, if I look back at Afghanistan, the universe was bringing me things like people were coming together, you know, NATO, the American government, the armed forces, and everybody to say, okay, we've got planes, we've got seats on planes, Saudi, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain, and them saying, okay, drop people off and we'll get lily pads here, we'll get planes, we'll get people out for you. Things that I never thought would happen, the universe just kept bringing. And I feel that when you're doing the right thing, God will bring the right people into your life. I've been brave enough to call out pedophiles. I've taken out a pedophile ring within the UN. So there are things that I've done that a lot of people have not done. But I think people globally respect you for actually being the real deal. That actually, I'm not just rocking up to come and do a talk, because I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm doing the work. But yes, being an activist has a price. There is the price of freedom, that maybe sometimes, you know, as much as I would love to be able to go and sit in a Starbucks or whatever else with friends and have a nice coffee, sometimes those things are not able to happen.
So in a way, your personal life is very small, as in, like,
Yeah.
you said, your friendship group. And how does that impact you? Because at the end of the day, we're all human. We want to do what I'd love to do what you're doing, but it takes a brave person to do what you're doing, to be honest. So how does it impact you on a personal level that your world is so small with friendships and stuff like
No,
that?
I've learned to
It
tell
doesn't.
myself,
It doesn't sound like
I'd rather have quality over quantity. I have thousands of
Yeah.
followers on social media. They are not my friends, but they are people that follow me. They like what I stand for. They like my work. They are inspired by what I've done. They want to follow my journey. Sometimes people reach out for help, and you know, and I feel very blessed and very lucky that, you know, that I've had this amazing life. I don't take it for granted, but I also know that when people target me and think, oh yeah, she's just really ambitious and she's this and that, they don't know that you've had cancer. They don't know that you couldn't have children. They just assume, oh yeah, she's just one of those women that, you know, climbed the ladder and that's it. She's not really bothered about other things. So I sometimes say to people, you know what, we don't know what somebody's going through. You just see this social media post, you see this face on telly or on Instagram or whatever else, but actually there is a human being behind that, and you need to like be kind if you can't be anything else.
In regards to a lot of the situations and a lot of things that you're fighting for, they're very, very, very big issues. With governments how they are, with politics how it is, not only within the UK but across the world, is there ever a point where you think it's an impossible task? And what inspires you to carry on in that case?
So you know what, it takes small steps. So I've been leading a lot on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We're in the decade for action. We've got like 7 years to achieve equality. It's never going to happen. You know, I was at the World Economic Forum. I'm going again in January in Davos, and they've told us it's going to take 131 years to get equality for women in the workplace to equal pay. So even in Britain, you're being paid nearly a quarter less than men, 24% less than men. So for the same job. So there's a lot of work to be done. So when I'm talking about those issues globally, I'm also saying, yeah, do you know what? In England, I ain't got my house in order either, but we're trying to do different things. We're looking at the diversity. We're looking at people giving opportunities to get more representation at the table. So again, you know, it's about being authentic and being genuine. Also, like what I always say to people, please be proud of who you are and bring yourself to the table and not be ashamed of what your religious beliefs are or what your sexuality or your gender or whatever it might be if you've got a disability. Because all the time you're wasting on not being authentic, you're kind of like wasting energy on issues that you could be doing things for in the workplace. So I'm really passionate about people bringing themselves to the table as their whole self. But what I would say to you on that is that I think for me, like, I don't kind of conform to just fit into society. You know, I am what I am. If you like me, you don't like
Clearly
me.
not, Mandy. Clearly not.
And if you don't like me, and if you don't, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, because actually your opinion of me is not that important. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And you learn that over, you know, years. And when you're talking about issues, though, that go against, you know, people's beliefs and their culture and different things like that, you have to try and educate them. And some people might take a note of something you said, but they may not buy into everything. And again, you know, it is just showing people that we can't do things on our own. It's about working with corporates and governments. And one of the things how I started was, one of the things that I learned was we have a lot of all party groups in the House of Commons, and that sometimes you have to be within the system, because you can all stand outside banging your flags and waving your placards or whatever else, or be lobbying and doing a petition, but actually sometimes it only goes so far. So what you need to be doing is get yourself into those decision-making tables in your country or at your university campuses or with organizations that have that link within to government, and talk about the issues that are important to you. So like about inequalities, through the pandemic, we saw South Asians dying more than anybody else, you know, and I was thinking, how can that happen? And, you know, there were still issues where people were living together, poor access to healthcare, poor housing. There were so many other issues that I thought had disappeared, because you live in your own little bubble sometimes, out of touch and in a nice big house. But actually, not everyone has that privilege. So, you know, it's about you addressing those issues. And I remember young people reaching out to me saying, Mandy, I don't have a laptop, I don't have a phone. I'm thinking, what the hell? We're in England, we're in the same storm, but in very different boats. That's what the pandemic showed me. We had digital poverty in the UK, one of the richest countries on the planet, but people did not have access to internet and different things like that. So I went to my corporate companies and friends and said, look, guys, you're all changing your computers, you're all going to work from home. Can we clear up your hard drives, give these laptops to the kids? And the government created a national data bank, and people are continuing to get laptops and free data and things now. So there are some good things that you can do, and look at those things in small steps. But so I always think, act globally, act locally.
I was going to say, I mean, in regards to certain governments, I mean, you're not in the electoral role, which is amazing for someone that has so much passion about activism, but obviously for your own safety, you've done that. How do you feel when you don't agree with whichever government it is, with decisions they're making, whether it's the UK or abroad? How does that make you feel? Do you swear in your head, or do you swear out loud, Mandy?
No, I'm willing to call out people, because there are things that, you know, that you kind of what I've done in the past is I've worked with leaders that they're probably not on my political kind of line with my values, but they are the government in power today. So I need to work with them. It's really important that you call it out for what it is. You address those issues and say to them, okay, do you know what? I don't have to like you, but actually you are going to be a part of this equation to help me fix this problem today. And you don't have to like me, but you need to respect me, and you need to understand what I'm bringing to the table.
As a parent, how can you encourage your children to become confident and to stand up for their beliefs and become an activist? How can you plant that seed?
I think you have to look at things that are important to you. What are the causes that are important to you as a person? And then when you are having those conversations at home with your children, that you're able to show them, look, it's okay. You know, so like, just say if they're looking at climate, for instance, or Greenpeace or whatever they're kind of interested in, and then kind of say to them, okay, we can take small steps into maybe not eating meat every day, and we're kind of having different things. So we're thinking about our carbon footprint. Maybe we could walk somewhere where we don't need to use the car. And you can bring your children into things slowly and kind of feed in drip, 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 those different things that you want to. So for me, like, I have, you know, 5 nieces and a couple of nephews that, you know, I love very dearly. And the thing is, some of them have really been interested in my work, and they've kind of shadowed and attended and been to events and traveled the world with me to see things that I do. And what it is, it's about me showing them, you have this privilege, but actually look at this, look at the people outside your hotel. Look at the same age children who don't have a right to go to educate. They don't have the life chances to go to school, and they have to work, which is not right. So this is why I'm standing up for, you know, forced labor and all those issues. I'm calling those out, and it's really important that we address those. So I think what we have to do is try to sort of show our children what is important to us. And if they're interested in something, we as parents or aunts or family members have a right to kind of endorse that and try and support that passion, because there is something really bad within our culture sometimes, because we want everyone to be a lawyer, doctor, teacher.
I was just about to say that. You read my mind. Yep.
Yeah. And so if somebody wants to do something different, let them, but we don't. I remember when I was younger, I wanted to go and work with people with disabilities and do different things. And people were saying to me, what kind of a job is that? Why can't you just go and be a doctor? Go and be this, be that.
This is what comfort is, what you know, isn't it? The normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes, so you steer away. Don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now those same aunties and uncles who thought, you know, 30 odd years ago that you was a waste of space because you didn't do what they wanted, you didn't follow the norm. Now they see you in the this and stuff, and they got a picture and they like run up to you in a wedding and they're like, oh, look, oh, Mandy's here. And I just think, you know what, you weren't a part of my life when I needed you. You weren't there a part of my dreams and goals when I wanted to do that. You've kind of tried to belittle me because it suited your agenda. And, you know, you didn't want your daughters or your daughter-in-laws to be around me because I was teaching them to find their own voice. And now those same people are running around you and think, oh, you know, we're really proud of you. Oh, we like this because of this. I just take it in my stride. I smile. I think, thank you. You know what? I don't need to be rude to them. But what I will say to you, as long as you're true to yourself and you are not imposing your dreams and expectations on your children, then that is what I would say to you. Because sometimes, you know, we have a bad habit in our culture where we sometimes live our dreams and our life through our children. We want our children to do the things that there's nothing wrong with that because we didn't have those opportunities before, maybe. But if you wanted to do something and you haven't been able to do it, you also need to let your child be who they want to be as well.
I think as parents, I must admit, I do that at certain extents. For example, I'm rubbish in English, so I try to make sure my daughter, I push her even more into that area. It's almost trying to get your child to be a better version of you. And so we do fall into that trap. But how do we make sure that we don't keep saying, all right, go for that safe option, become a solicitor, become a doctor? As a parent, you're like, okay, but I don't know that ground. So it sounds better to be the doctor, be the solicitor. How do we as parents learn to not be like that?
Especially,
Yeah,
can I just add, I was going to say, Mandy, especially because what you've said, what you're doing, yes, it's going against communities, you're going against governments, you're going through against politics. And again, you've seen the repercussions of that as well. So how can we, the next generation, say, well, yeah, put yourself in that position where, because I completely agree, which is why I love everything you're saying, even if our views don't completely align on certain things, but the fact that you've gone and done it, how can we say to the next generation, yes, do that, get away from that safe option and put yourself in that position?
I think there's a couple of things. So, like for me, I had multiple streams of like income through real estate. I've got like through consultancy for like taking on projects. So there were different things that you were doing. So you have to get your house in order brick by brick and have things in place because actually there's great things about having a voice and doing those things. Sometimes you could go against something that is not popular and your employer and those things could jeopardize things. So it is about like understanding the cultures of the organizations where you work and different things like that as well. And we're seeing this more now that the world has become so polarized more recently with conflicts. There's 25, 26, 7 conflicts going on around the world. And sadly, you know, sometimes people will follow things or sometimes families will see something and say, this happened to our community, this happened to our culture, this has happened to my community, you know, as Sikhs or Hindus or Muslims, this happened to us. And, you know, you need to take that stance. But actually, if it doesn't always agree with you, you have to be able to say, okay, do you know what? I respect that. And I know that that has happened because I can't devalue what you're feeling or limit what your experience is. It comes back to that. But again, it is really about you being true to yourself. It's also about not jumping on the bandwagon because this is a thing with young people. So it was like the whole Black Lives Matters. There was loads of people doing the knee, and now you see those people and they've like forgotten about it, or somebody's jumped onto the Me Too movement, and now nobody's really talking about it again. And you know, for me, I don't go with just the trends. I've always been very consistent, and I will call out the abuses and whatever else. I'm still talking about sexual violence. I'm still taking out predators. I'm still standing up for Black lives or all lives. So for me, what I would say to you, you can't just go with the trends because sometimes people just follow and they don't want to like do it. And I always say to people, you know, you can't climb a ladder with your hands in your pocket. You need to do the hard work and the graft, and it's really important. And when I talk about violence against women, I look at the same women that have been around me, and some of them are running their own charities. I sometimes ask them, how many people have you supported this year? And they'll be like, oh, 3 or 4. And I think, okay. And, you know, what about all the other people? Oh, because we didn't get the money for them. Oh, because we don't get that, they don't have benefits. Or they came from India, they have no recourse to public funds, so we can't help them. But actually, she might be the one that's most vulnerable. She might be the one that's most in need. So what else can you do to support them? So, you know, for me, because it's not transactional, it's not about the money, it's about the cause. This is why maybe that, you know, you are able to make that difference and that I am able to do the work that I'm doing because actually I'm in a position of privilege, but I pay my privilege forward. And when I meet young people and I mentor young people, I mentor people all the time. And I always say to them, what is it that you want to do with your life? What is it that you want to achieve? And they'll be like, oh, we want to be like you. It's like, well, that's not good enough. What is it that you really want to do? I mean, it's great looking at me thinking, oh, Mandy's got this great life. But really, on your hand and your heart, is that really what motivates you? Is that what really stirs the passion in you? And they'll be like, no, actually, I want to do that. So I said, well, maybe you need to go and do that, but I'm happy to help you.
It's digging deeper in yourself, isn't it? Finding what you truly want rather than, because it's easy to go with the latest trend almost because it's always in the news and you don't have to do the research for it. So that's why you probably, because you're so hit with all this news and everything and it's in your face. And so I suppose it's easier to take that path rather than researching. And for example, the domestic abuse, just keep going researching it because that's not always in the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, in regards to language, one thing that we've come across many times on this podcast, regardless of whichever issues we're talking about, is when there is conflict between two different views, it's very hard to get your point across to the other side, whether you agree. I mean, we had an episode a little while ago, and it was a bit of a debate. However, one thing I really enjoyed about it was the fact that at the end of it, we still respected each other's opinions. How do you then approach, how would someone who doesn't agree with someone else's view approach and make sure your voice is still heard?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's very difficult when you're so polarized.
Yeah. And the thing is, what it's also about, there's a couple of things there. Sometimes you need to know that actually this conversation isn't going to really go anywhere. So maybe I just need to step away from this conversation and not be a part of this, because actually at the moment, this isn't the right time they're not going to listen to my point of view. There are things where we may find some middle common ground, but not 100%. So there might be some things that you have in line. So you have to build on those values that you have. So for instance, there has been things around, like different faith and different cultures and things that have happened. And I've called out abuses around the world. And like I said, I would support you regardless of your ethnicity, your religion, your culture. And I'm very consistent with my approach that I'm standing up for all women and I'm standing up for all. And at the moment, if I look at the current climate within the Palestinian and the Hamas-Israeli war, there's a lot of tension and lots of real emotion out there. And what I have to do is just say, look, I'm sticking up for all women. I've been doing this for 30 odd years. I'm not saying that, Israel is doing something right or Hamas is right. What I'm looking at is actually the real people. I'm not getting involved in the politics. I'm staying in my lane. I'm doing this. So then people will still attack you, but you have to just say, look, actually, this is why I'm standing by this comment. I'm also standing up for the children, but you just have to be very clear. And you have to be very clear with what you're saying as well. You can't be flip-flopping and just then change because that's popular.
But then do you ever find that you would have gone into any conversation with one view and then having spoken to someone, although I won't call it flip-flopping, but I suppose learning the other side. Have you ever then changed your opinion?
That happened. Yeah, that has happened loads of times. So, there's things that have happened to like where I've gone around in Latin America or somewhere like that. And there were things that were happening in the community, like abortion, the girls would go into prison, but actually they wouldn't prosecute the perpetrator and stuff like that. And I was like trying to understand the culture and saying to them, look, this isn't right. And it was their faith that they were on about, like, oh, but we can't abort. But I said, you know what? I'm kind of about pro-choice. I'm not pro-life. I'm not here to tell you about abortions and stuff, because that is a whole different debate and a different complex thing. What I would say to you is a woman's right, and she has this right to choose. But the problem is, you don't have a right to force this child to have a child that they don't want. And then it was like, okay, look, we're not going to abort, but then, okay, we'll send it away to an orphanage and we'll do that. They were then kind of coming back to you with the trauma of like having an abortion. And, there's articles that I've done. If you look at Mandy Section abortion, there was things happening in our community where people would go to India, or families would abort the child because it was a girl. Before it was, and that I had a real problem with. I'm not going to lie to you, because again, even though I'm about pro-choice and I want your body, you do with it what you want. What I had to understand was that when I was meeting the women who were going through these abortions, they were put under so much duress and pressure by their in-laws and their husbands that they were saying to me, Mandy, look, I need to have this abortion because otherwise my marriage is going to end. And I was thinking, do you really want to be in this marriage? I was thinking, you know, as an activist and a campaigner, she's like, yeah, but I've got 2 children. He's a father of my children. He doesn't normally beat me up, and I'm quite happy living in my big house. And I, you know, but I understand why he wants me to do this. But so I then couldn't fix that situation. So then I went and lobbied and talked about this with government. And we had this conversation around, you know what, who do you prosecute? Is it the woman who's choosing to abort? Do you prosecute the doctor? There were so many extra nuances in this conversation. And then there was lobbying and campaigning that the government then realized that actually there's work to be done with the hospitals, that actually you can't tell some communities the genders of their child.
I remember that phase when that happened. They weren't telling.
Yeah, so I was on that. So if you Google it, you'll find it. I was involved in that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and you know, and so for me, like, there's work that I've been really kind of like, not just about gender-based violence, but actually calling out practices in our community. There's been issues where families will carry out ritual abuse, where they've gone to a faith leader who's saying, oh yeah, well, you know, Taj has been possessed by the, you know, she's got black magic and you need to do this, you need to do that. And I'm thinking, hang on, where does that tell you in Sikhi? Where does it tell you that in, you know, there in your sacred text, that it's okay to go out and abuse and torture a person because of this? And it's trying to help them to educate. And I said, listen, all the years I've done work on disability, right? No amount of prayer. If I don't have an arm, it's not going to grow back. Yeah. So you need to understand that. And you need to like tell them as plain as simple as that. Because, you know, I have no problem. And I say to the community, look, and I did a big event around faith-based. I think you'll probably find that on social somewhere. But what happened was, I was talking to our community and saying to them, look, you know, why are you paying these people money, right? These people are charlatans. They see you. If a younger woman came in on her own, they probably think she's got marital problems. If a couple come in, they probably think, oh, they're having problems with children and what, not being able to conceive or whatever. It's not rocket science. It's common sense that you can read people's body language. So for me, when there are people misusing their positions of power and position, I'm not scared to call it out. And I remember going once to a Gurdwara, and the guy was like, I'm going to put a spell on you. And I just walked in and started singing, yes, yeah, put a spell on me. And I walked out and I thought, yeah, whatever, because you don't scare me. But somebody who may be not as strong as me, who may be worried, oh my God, you know, oh my God, the bead or the iman or the Baba's going to do something to me. Oh my God. And you just fall in the negative mindset of that.
The other thing that has been very evident on our podcast, again, regardless of whichever topic that we're talking about, is this whole thing of what will the community say? How have you approached? I mean, I can clearly see what you're going to say, but it is a major, it's actually one of the sentences, whenever one of our guests says it, we put our hands in our head in our hands, because it comes up so often. What will the community say? And it seems to be one of the biggest issues that not only is positive, because the community is absolutely fantastic when you need it to be, but it's very much a massive negative as well. How have you approached the community as a whole, your own local community, even your parents, when you were doing these?
Look, I mean, you know, I've been very blessed that I have, you know, amazing siblings and my mum, you know, and they've been, you know, big supporters. I mean, I'm not going to lie, they worry about me because they worry about some of the battles that you're taking. They're worried that one day they're going to find me shot somewhere, but they understand who I am, what I do. But I don't listen to the bakwas of other people. And I'm going to tell you that. I mean, I got divorced over 30 odd years ago. I was the first person to get divorced in my family. And the aunts and the uncles and your so-called extended aunts and grands and whatever else saying, oh, you don't want to be near her because she's going to be a bad influence. And, you know, and I think like I've been quite lucky because like, I think my family will say, look, do you know what? She's not coming around knocking on your door asking for help. She's not asking you for anything. Your opinion of her does not matter. And that is something that has given me that sense of self. It's given me that confidence that I think does put me in a very unique situation. I was the first grandchild, first daughter. and, a bit spoilt. I didn't really look like up near people when I was growing up. I had like really kind of ginger hair, lots of freckles and green eyes. And as I grew up, I knew that I was different, but I celebrated being different. And then maybe that I've always been outside the bell curve, that I've accepted that. And I think for me, that I've just had this moral compass that you don't need to waver. And you know what I always say, like, empty vessels make the most noise. People that don't matter to you, their opinion does not matter to me. Because at the end of the day, they're going to say things about me regardless. They're going to say things about the choices that I make. And what I always find really funny is that people who are not a part of my future or a part of my life today, they only talk about the old version of me because they don't know what's going on in my new version of life.
Do you think there's a type of person that can only do the work that you do? Because you have to be a very strong person to do, and the choices that you've made. And so, or do you think that we can encourage our children?
We've all got that.
Yeah,
we've all.
we've all got it.
People to do. I mean, look, I want people to live their life the way that they want to live it. That is where I will stand. I may not always agree with people on certain things, but I will always defend your right to say it. Yeah. And that is something that I really am very passionate about. What I have learned is that I am a bit of a freak of nature, to be honest, in one way, because, that I kind of have got to a stage in my life as the older I've got, I'm more than 5 decades on this planet now, that, what other people think of me is none of my business. That is what I tell myself every day. What somebody else thinks of me absolutely means nothing to me. It's not my business, because I can't stop them thinking negatively about me. I can't stop them judging me. All I'm doing is staying in my lane. I know that I'm doing good. I know that I wake up and I'm trying to make a difference in people's lives. So, like I said, I've been so blessed with the most amazing life and career that I'm paying it forward. And, I always sort of say to my nieces and nephews and other young people that I mentor, and they'll say, why do you always like pay it forward so much? And I said, if you filled a glass of water, you have to tip it forward in order to new water to come in. And that is how life and the universe works. So, if I would have been so complacent, oh, maybe I've spoken in the House of Lords, that's it now, I'm holding on to that chair, the universe would never have given me the new things in my life. And when I talk about universe, you can call it Waheguru, you can call it Allah, you may call it whatever you believe in. But I use the phrase, the universe, is just a phrase that I use. And, I've been so blessed, and I cannot take it for granted. You know what? It's very easy to kind of like get very egoistic about everything that you've achieved. I'm always giving people seats at the decision-making table. I mean, I've been invited to Cambridge University, but I'm not able to make it. So I asked Nina to take my seat. It's like, I was invited to go and speak at COP, and I said, I can't make it. So I sent 2 people that were living in Dubai and another friend who was going to Dubai, go and speak in my place. Because actually, sometimes I'm flying somewhere, I can't be in 2 or 3 places. And I practice what I preach. I give other people those opportunities. But the problem is, sometimes people will hold on to that one place that they have, or they have a contact, or they know somebody in the public domain, or they know somebody in the public eye, that then too scared to share their connections and their contacts. And you have a mindset of like not giving it and paying it forward to somebody. And so if your glass is full, you're literally just sitting on it and not allowing new opportunities in.
Mandy, as we come to the end of this episode, can you just give us a bit of a summary for someone that does have something they want to fight for? What are the steps they should take to make sure that they can carry it through and make sure that their voice is heard?
Yeah. So you have to find something that you're passionate about, that lines with your values or your belief system, that you're doing it for the right reason and you're not doing it because it's the trend today. Also, look at finding people who are close to you or in your network on social media. When I was activist and campaigner, you didn't have social media. You wasn't able to connect with people around the world. You had to work with the old-fashioned press and do different things to get your messages out there. So I think things are a lot more easier for the next generation now, because actually social media can bring people together. There's a 6-degree separation from most people. So what I would say to you is that you find something that you're passionate about, find things that you really want to do, not just follow, the latest friend, and realize that actually sometimes you may not be able to do everything you want to do, but just accept the small steps that you've done and celebrate those. Sometimes, change takes a very long time. I'm still here doing that. And, I wish domestic violence had disappeared. I wished honor-based violence had disappeared, but it sadly isn't. So, all you have to do is be very consistent and turn up and do that. And also, what I would say to you, not be shy to ask for a mentor and reach out to organizations and volunteer and give away your time and find things that you're passionate about. Because sometimes, we want to look at things and think, oh, I just want to become an activist. I want to travel the world. I want to do that. That will come later. I'm also going to be very honest with you. Activism doesn't pay very well at all. So for me, like, I've had to find other streams of income to keep me afloat. So I was able to follow my Dharma, my life purpose, and things that I wanted to do. So, like doing consultancy, taking on projects, real estate and different things like that. Those things, you have to have your house in order, because actually, if you don't have your own house in order, you're not going to be much use to somebody else. And if your child comes back and wants to talk about something, it might be something that you're not happy about, but you need to have that conversation, because if you don't give them the advice and the knowledge, they're going to go and find it online, which might not be the right way. And I think recently I was talking to children. There's a lot of things around all the different genders and things like that going on, and parents are really struggling to have conversations. And I'm saying to parents, look, have an honest conversation with your child, speak to them about your fears and tell them about, what you're expecting. And actually, it is very difficult to navigate, and it's very difficult to raise your children in the presence of social media, because sometimes the information they're getting is not actually accurate, it's really fake. So, it is about sticking to the facts and the truth, and then about following your why and finding something that really stirs the passion for you, whether that is that you're going to be an activist and campaigner for the Sikh community, for the Free Palestine, or climate, or domestic violence, or whatever, animal rights, whichever one it is for you. Do the one that feels right for you. And it's a compliment when people want to follow your journey, and I'm always showing them, and the challenges that you will come across and the barriers that you will have to overcome, and they keep coming back. But it's about building that resilience and not giving up. And it's very easy to when things haven't gone your way, to think, oh God, I'm just going to throw in the towel. But sometimes fear is a part of success, and failure is a part of success as well. And one of the things I've learned is that fear is only real inside my head, and outside my head it doesn't exist. And it's really important that you take the good and bad that comes in life, because they're a part of the same coin. And like day and night, good and bad, those shall pass. And as long as you do things that you're passionate about and you feel important to you, then that's what you need to do.
And that was Mandy's summary. So if you want to become an activist, it's not an easy journey. Thank you so much for your time, Mandy. I think, it's inspirational seeing anyone go and do the things that you have done, regardless of whether people agree with your opinions or not. There's no doubt about the fact that you are a complete inspiration with the amount of work and the stages that you're on as well. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
I appreciate it. And no, thank you, girls. Thank you.
Perfect. That's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.